Good. It's good to be with you today. You know, I love you, Suncrest. I say that genuinely. I love you. That is the phrase. Thanks. Love you too. That's good. That is the phrase for this weekend. But I mention it today because about 10 years ago, I said that to all of you at the end of a service. I love you, Suncrest. And 10 years ago, instead of walking off the stage this way and going back so I can get to the commons area and actually talk to a bunch of people, I was making the mistake of walking off the stage this way, and then I'd get caught down here just talking to a few people. But on that particular weekend, I walked off the platform over here, and there was a person I didn't know sitting in the front row, and she came up to me, and the very first words out of her mouth were, "Do you really?" I said, "Do I really?" I had already forgotten what I said right before I walked off the stage. I said, "What do you mean, do you really?" She said, "You just said that you loved us. Do you really?" And it caught me off guard a little bit. And honestly, started to make me feel a little defensive inside. I thought first to myself, like, I don't know, do I really? I mean, I really do love Suncrest as a whole, and I do the best I can at loving people individually, but I'm sure I fail at that, and expectations, I'm starting to doubt myself, I'm staring her in the face. And on top of that, I thought, well, I have a definition of what love is, or at least I think I do, and I think I can meet that, but what's her definition of love, and what expectations is she going to place on me? And I've been boxed into a corner before, and I don't want to be manipulated, and like all this is going through my mind. And so I said, I really do. Tell me your story. And the moment I invited her to tell me her story, I realized she wasn't manipulating me. She wasn't trying to box me in or get me, force me to define, what I would do for each person in the church. Actually, quite the opposite. She had been on the receiving end of someone saying, "I love you," before. But they were using it manipulatively. It was a phrase that had been said to her because someone wanted something of her. It was a phrase that was said to her, and then the person never followed through to help her or walk with her through anything at all. And so she was just genuinely curious. Like, if you're going to say those words, around here, does it hold water? That's a great question. And for a little bit, it made me more careful about saying, "I love you" to people. I thought, I don't want to be, the person who's manipulative or casting a vision that I can't really hold myself to, or all those sorts of things. I got real careful about saying it, which meant I started to say it less. And it wasn't too long after noticing that I was saying it less that I came to the conclusion, that's worse. That's worse than taking the risk of potentially being misunderstood or being manipulated or someone thinking you mean something that you don't mean. Because when you stop expressing to someone, when you stop expressing to people that you love them, oh my goodness. I know this about your relationships. There are people who need to know that you love them. And if you aren't expressing it to them, they're wilting right now. They're dying right now. I mean, that's what this whole theme verse for the whole series has taught us, right? That the tongue has the power of life and death. And so as we talk today about expressing love to one another, I'm excited actually for this to not just be the last one in the list, but the culminating one in the list of 5 phrases the scriptures help us to see so we could really encourage, literally bring courage to the people who are around us. Now, it is no mistake. It's entirely by design that we culminate the series not only with the phrase, "I love you," but that we culminate it on Mother's Day weekend, That's awesome, right? You've had a little bit of love. Let me add that. So thank God for all the moms in here, right? I broadened this a little bit because, my mom means the world to me. I think you've all heard me talk about that. But it's other women too. And I just think, well, this is how I think. Thank God for strong women whose words give courage. Thank God for my mom and for my grandmothers. I didn't have any aunts that played this role in my life, but I see some of you who are aunts to nieces and nephews, and your voice really matters to them. To the women, the strong women who have been teachers at church, at school, anywhere. Oh my goodness, this is everything. It was the voice of strong women in my life that gave me the courage. I heard, hey, get back in the batter's box. I heard, I think you need to admit that you're wrong. I heard someone encouraged me to follow my dream. And there was one very particular woman in my life who said, you should ask Jenny out. And I'm like, thank God for that. For the strong women in our lives. And we're going to talk about the phrase, I love you today, but this strength, of course, comes in all the phrases we've been talking about. Well done, when women say that. I see in you, when we have the idea that I'm with you, or simply someone saying thank you to you. It makes all the difference. But can I make this a little more just real life today? Because I don't just thank God for strong women, I thank God for overwhelmed women who are giving us courage. And I just want to acknowledge today that this is actually what we're all doing through adulthood. We're juggling a lot. And ladies, we honor you for all that you juggle and all the weight that you carry, and that in the midst of being overwhelmed, you still bring these words of strength and life to us. I guess it's always been a trend to some degree. I just feel like it's kind of jet fueled right now, where kids, teenagers, young adults actually get kind of judgy toward their parents. They think, well, my mom or my dad didn't meet expectations. They didn't live up. I'll be in counseling the rest of my life because of what my parents didn't do. And that usually only lasts until your 20s, or at least until you get married and you have kids. And you're like, this isn't so easy, is it? And that's a really healthy perspective for us to have, because we can't just be judgmental toward people who, moms are doing this when they're overwhelmed. They're doing it when they're frustrated. And then I just say, thank God for godly women whose words give us courage. And by godly women, I don't mean perfect women. I mean people who have, and this is everything for this weekend, people who have experienced and received the love of God. And then take the love of God that has come to them, and they don't withhold it. They pass it on through them. So today, as we culminate this series, I'm going to ask all of you to think about the expressions of love in your life, to make sure that you and I are actually saying and showing to others that we truly, truly love them. And it's so important to me because I'm not asking you to express something that isn't true inside of you. That would be the worst. I don't want you to go say, I love you to people that you don't love. I was talking to someone once, and this is a pretty common conversation, to say, hey, sometimes we have a wrong definition of love. We talk about love as a feeling, and maybe you even said to someone, I love you, and the reason you said it is because you like how they make you feel. But when you like how someone makes you feel, you shouldn't say, I love you. You should say, I like how you make me feel. To understand that I wouldn't express love without actually experiencing love. Having the experience of love is to say, I appreciate what love is. And so before I encourage you in a very practical way to express your love to people in your life, can we just take this idea of love and appreciate that it is the greatest idea the greatest concept, the most substantial understanding that any human being could ever have. I'm gonna make a list of claims here right at the start. I'll go through them pretty quickly. And you may agree or disagree with my claims, but I will spend the rest of the message helping you to see why I think they're true. Here's the first one. Love is central to the Bible. Like you can't read the scriptures and come across with anything that is the central message other than love. And maybe more specifically, love is central to Christianity. Uniquely, when Jesus comes onto the scene and we see what he does for us, that love is absolutely at the center of this. So we shouldn't be surprised that love is central to God. But this concept, which we will see play out in the scriptures today, you can't overestimate its uniqueness to Christianity, and how love isn't just one of God's qualities, it is absolutely the source quality that all the other qualities come from. And so you may not be surprised to hear me say love is central to everything. And who wants to argue that? Love is central to how you experience life. It's central to whether you have courage or don't have courage. People who don't receive love become wounded. They become anxious. It's even possible that you feel like you love someone, but they haven't heard it from you, and it shapes them in such a negative way. I mean, love is central to everything. Some of you have heard me use the quote before. It's one of my favorite quotes. It simply says, what comes to mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. Because however you picture God, even if you picture him incorrectly, however you picture God, that's clearly the most important thing. And then you're going to test yourself against it, and you're going to decide whether you're going to receive it, and you think the creator of the universe is marked by it. Whatever it is that you think about God is the most important thing about you. And if God is love, then love is central to everything. Now, I mean, how am I going to escalate this from everything? So let me walk it back very specifically to love is central to relationships. I mean, you either have a great relationship or a poor relationship with your mom or your dad or your spouse or your kids or your uncle or your boss, honestly, based on love. We are relational beings. This is the way that God created us because God himself is a relational being. It's why love is so central to our entire existence. And nobody ever argues with me when I posit that when your relationships are good, life is good. And when your relationships aren't good, life isn't good. There's nothing wrong with money and fame and power and all of that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that you can have all those things, and if your relationships aren't good, life isn't good. And you can have none of those things, but if your relationships are good, life is good, and love is at the center of relationships. Let me tell you a quick story. There's a counselor named Dr. Gary Chapman. He's now 88 years old. But he wrote a book in the early 90s called The 5 Love Languages. This is actually one of the best-selling nonfiction books of the last 50 years. And actually just a few years after he wrote it, Dr. Chapman, before he became wildly popular, came to a church in Munster. And Jenny and I went to listen to him there along with a crowd from Suncrest early days that were there. And the concept of the 5 love languages changed so much for Jenny and I. Now, I'll send you the link in my weekly email to the book. I'm not trying to push the book. Here's what I'm saying. Figuring out how to express love is absolutely central to our relationships. And one of the mistakes that we make with love is that we don't take long enough to learn how someone else might want to receive love from us, which is a very loving thing to do. to not just run it through my lens, but to run it through someone else's lens, and not just assume the way that I receive love is the same way someone else will want to. Dr. Chapman's survey online, the 5 love languages, has been done by 100 million people. He actually has a survey for the 5 love languages for teens. And get this is an 88-year-old dude. His survey took off on TikTok and had 6 million surveys filled out over the course of 3 weeks because social media. I'm just telling you, there's a thing people are trying to figure out. And a lot of us want to figure it out because we're in desperate need of receiving love, of knowing that someone loves us. And all of us are in desperate need of getting better at expressing it. And of course, to wrap up this list, I'd say love is central to human courage. We are all human beings, and that means both that we're fragile and that we have the image, we bear the image of God. And our ability to step into things that seem difficult, our ability to endure through something that seems like it isn't coming to an end, and in particular, our ability to face a fear is absolutely connected to whether we feel loved. So, with that in mind, let me pour over a lot of scripture today to help you see how these claims are true and also practical in our lives. So, as many of you might know, there's 4 what we call Gospels in the New Testament. They're all the biographies of Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm going to spend most of my time with John today, so I just want for a moment to acknowledge this is true all over the place with Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm going to show you a passage from Matthew here, but this same passage is in Mark and Luke. It's just all over, central to the New Testament, to Christianity. Someone asked Jesus, and they're asking him actually on the basis of the Old Testament, which is the Bible, like, hey, what's the most important law? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and all your mind. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And then this is what he says, get this. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands, that we would actually love God. And that in our love for God, that would be expressed by loving our neighbor. This is what Jesus is saying. He's like, the whole thing, this is it. I could go to other parts of the New Testament. You read Romans chapter 12 where it says, love must be sincere. And then it talks about how we would not return evil for evil. But because of the love that is inside of us and what has been done for us, we would return good for evil. You could go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, probably the most famous chapter about love in all the scriptures. It's this beautiful description actually of God's love for us, and it reminds us that love is patient. How do you experience love? Love is kind. It doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking. And so we start to build out what love really is, and what we need to experience from other people and what they need to experience from us. Love keeps no record of wrongs. It always trusts. It always perseveres. There's not a more important idea in the whole world. But John uniquely helps us understand how critical it is for us to experience the receiving and the giving of love and how central it is to our faith. Let me give you a little setup on who John is. You may not know this. John wrote 5 of the documents in our New Testament, the biography, the Gospel of John, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and then actually the book of Revelation. John was the only one of the 12 apostles who was not martyred, executed for his faith. However, he did end up getting exiled to the island of Patmos. Now, think about it like this. It's almost like Alcatraz without the prison. It's like, hey, we'll put all the people we don't want bothering others out on Patmos. They can't swim from there. There's some freedom to live on the island, but they're separating you from all chance to influence others. So John's only chance to influence was to write. John lived into old age. And when he wrote the biography of Jesus, interestingly, he describes himself not by his name John, but by calling himself the disciple Jesus loved. What an interesting description, right? I mean, I'll admit, the first time I read that, I'm like, oh, really, John? You're the one. You're the disciple Jesus loved. You're kind of full of yourself, aren't you? But you only have to take a little bit of time with this description and understand this is not pride. This is identity. He's like, you don't need to know John. You need to know that I'm the one who has received the love of God. That's who I am. And everything I do comes out of that. So John takes what Jesus has taught in what we call the synoptic gospels, the ones that give a synopsis of his life, and he steps back and says, let me highlight the most important concepts. And so in John chapter 13, he's been tracking with Jesus, and we're now in the upper room. The night before Jesus is going to the cross. He's got his disciples who are gathered there. I think it's important Jesus starts by washing their feet. A selfless expression of giving yourself to someone else. And then he has all these disciples together. He's about to go to the cross, and this is what he says to them. A new command I give you. Love one another. Now, that's not a new command. Jesus had already said to everyone, he's like, well, you know what the biggest, most important commands are? Love God, love others, like love one another. Not a new command. It's the next line. It's the next line where Jesus is going to say, we are now stepping into the new covenant. There was an old covenant. It had a purpose. It was for a time. This is the one for followers of Jesus. This is the one who will be my followers. And I'm asking you, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. And then he went and he laid down his life for them. This is what love is. And Jesus is asking everyone who is one of his followers to make sure that when we love others, the way this works is we would lay down our lives for them. You know, I've been talking even earlier in the series about the golden rule. Hey, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's a mutuality to that. Jesus amps it up. I call this the platinum rule. This is not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's not how Jesus treated us. He didn't do to us as we would do to him. He said, I'll do for you something that costs me. Not because you deserve it, but because I love you. In the same way I'm loving you, you love other people that way. And for a community of people in this room who are mostly Jesus followers, this is our calling. To love others as Christ has loved us. And then he says this, by this, everyone will know that you're one of my disciples if you love one another like this. He actually, I mean, you could think about it this way. This will be a good test for all of us. He actually is saying, I think the non-Christians should judge you. I think they should judge you. And here's how they should judge you. If you call yourself one of my followers, you will be known by the idea that you're concerned for others, that you would give of yourself, you would sacrifice yourself for the good of others because you are the kind of person who loves like I love. Wouldn't the world be an amazing place if every follower of Jesus took the command of Jesus and the new covenant seriously to say, this is how the people around us will experience us. Yes, our kids. Yes, our spouse. Yes, our parents. Yes, the person at the drive-thru. Yes, the person who cut you off. This was Jesus. It wasn't just love those who love you. It was love your enemies. It was all over. And you love them the way Christ loved you. Whew. That could change the world. And so John, After he tells this story of Jesus and writes this in the gospel, then it starts to write down 3 other letters. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time in 1 John chapter 3 and 1 John chapter 4, because as he's again expressing who Jesus is, he's coming back to this idea of love. Here's what he says. For this is the message you've heard from the beginning. We should love one another. John's laying it down. Here we go. He says, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. You might have a grid in your mind of what you think love is. You might, for a moment, imagine that love is a feeling, that it's primarily an emotion, that it's something you would feel and that you want to feel. But Jesus, John, in the image of Jesus, is teaching us something so important. That love can be empty words, and it absolutely is not attached to feelings. Love is a choice that we make to go and sacrifice ourselves, to give our lives just as he did. Now, Jesus, of course, died for all of us, and that is the most extreme version. In our lives, when we encounter people, this is saying, I'll let it cost me. I'll let it cost me. When the Apostle Paul writes about husbands and wives, what does he say to the husbands? Ephesians chapter 5. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Oh boy. This is a high calling to those of us guys who are married. And it's all in this same vein. He wants there to be no mistake about it. Love is a conscious decision to step into an action where you give of yourself at cost of yourself for the good of someone else, just as God did for us. And we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. Finishes it this way. Let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Now, I'm going to encourage you today to think about this both in terms of action and in terms of words and speech. John is leaning into something here that is true. If you were talking to a crowd and you were thinking, well, is it more likely they're saying it but not doing it, or doing it but not saying it? For sure, the answer on the whole is it's more likely people say, I love you, but they're not actually out there sacrificing and giving of themselves. But in other parts of the scriptures and probably in your life experience, I do want you to appreciate the opposite is only slightly better. That you tried to show someone love, but if you didn't say it, they missed it. And to hear these 3 words, I love you. To withhold those words from someone else, it's brutal. 1 John chapter 4. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God. Why? Because God is love. Now, I know these are just 3 words on a page. You're going to see these 3 words come up again about 2 sentences after he writes them here. But I just want you to appreciate this. You can study all the world religions that there are. You can study all the philosophies, historically, all the things that came before Jesus. Even the Old Covenant itself had not put together a concept like this. To square it up and not say God is loving, that it's one of his qualities along with being merciful and all those things, but to say, no, this is fundamental. This is unique to Christianity. And this is who I believe God is. God is love. Have you heard me say that whatever comes to mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. And that if God is love, it changes everything. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we've loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God loved us, we also ought to love one another. If you're not a follower of Jesus and you're here today, I'm really glad that you're here. And I do hope that when I teach about who God is and who Christ is, that you would be open to the idea of becoming a Christian. But I honor the idea that at this point in your life, you have not. You have said, I don't believe that. I have not placed my trust in that. I've not committed myself. I've not aligned myself with Jesus as King. I'm on the outside. And if that's you today, you'll probably benefit from, well, how impactful it could be if we learn to express love to one another. But I'm talking to those of you who are Jesus followers. That's who I'm talking to. Dear friends, since God has loved us, since he gave his Son for us, how do we not love and express love coming out of us? Those of us who follow Jesus, we ought to be shining stars in this world. We ought to be the people others can count on. Maybe you've heard me say something like this before. I always think like Christianity has some wild beliefs. You have to believe that a guy died and rose from the dead. I understand that that's a stretch for a lot of people. And a lot of times I just hope that as you and I and our church and all the churches kind of walk out there as followers of Jesus, the people who aren't followers of Jesus would look at us and say, they believe some crazy things, but boy, do they love each other. And boy, do they love us. You know what, I don't know if I'd ever become one of them, but I'd like to work for one of them. I don't know if I'd ever become one of them, but I'd like one of them to work for me. I don't know if I'd ever call myself a Christian, but I'd sure like my banker to be a Christian. I'd like my waitress to be a Christian. I may not be a Christian, but I sure like for my daughter to marry one of those. Because this is who Christians are. God is love. And we have received from God this love that we now pass on to others. And the moment you and I start thinking, oh, but that's going to cost me. I want that very thought. It's going to cost me to be like, so I should probably do it. Instead of, so I'm tapping out. Because this is what love is. And so we know and we actually rely on the love God has for us. God is love. And whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is our test. Did I mention that love can give you courage? Here's how John wraps this up. There's no fear in love. Oh my goodness. If someone knows you and they love you, it will be an expression to you that you can handle it. They know you and they love you. You can have courage to face anything. And then John kind of finishes off John 4 like this. Go to the next slide. We love because he first loved us. Whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or sister, they're a liar. Anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. So this is a high and holy calling to those of us who follow Jesus. That in the same way he loved us, we too would then love others. What is love? I'll give you a simple definition. Love is giving yourself for another. It will be inconvenient. It will interrupt your day. It will cost you time or energy or money or strength, just as it did God to love us. And so, this is the challenge for this week. To say, I love you. To express, I love you. To every person you talk with. I know what some of you are thinking, and you're like, that's going to be weird. You think that's going to stop me from asking you to do what Christ has done for us? I mean, if you need to modify it so that it's not too weird, you can say, we love you. I mean, I don't generally go around to women saying, I love you. But I'll say, you know what, Jenny and I love you. I just want them to know, because I've been too careful before. And withholding the words that express to someone that they are loved is a much greater threat than me expressing it too frequently or in ways that are uncomfortable. And so, I won't make you raise your hands, but I'm curious who's up for this. That every person you talk to this week will get a mention that you love them. Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.